Hello, nerds. Welcome to the Booknerds podcast. It's great having another awesome author on the podcast. First of all, I would like to welcome Venkat on the podcast. Hello, Venkat. How are you?
Hi, Rohan. I'm doing excellent. Very excited to talk to you from Booknerds.
Great. So let me tell you all a little bit about Dr. Venkat, what he has done, and he is such an experienced guy. I'm so excited to talk to him. So Dr. Venkat Kumaresan is an enterprising leader, humorist, coach, and motivational speaker with a specialization in industrial psychology. He has over 20 years of international exposure with leading teams in automobiles, navigation systems, telecom, and information technology. Venkat's leadership perspective of seeing his team as his own children is cherished by his teams for many years. Whenever he is not reading or writing, Venkat engages in karaoke and memes creation. I've almost cracked up Venkat while I was reading this because memes creation, this is awesome.
Yeah, I'm a fun-loving individual, so would like to look at how do I twist incidents to make people laugh. So that's why memes creation is my hobby.
Great. We would love to have another podcast just about those memes. Why not? I wanted to tell all our listeners about the book. It's called Father of Your Team. It's a soulful guide to modern day managers, and it's a business self-help book. Personally, I am a big one for reading those kind of books. And it is the world's first book on implementing paternalistic leadership, which is a new concept altogether. I read the book and it's pretty inspiring, to be honest. And another thing that was fascinating was that it ranked number one as a new release by Amazon US in office management. So congratulations on that, Venkat, because ranking number one in this category is not a mean feat.
Absolutely, because Amazon US is the marketplace where maximum number of books get onto. So it's a very tough battlefield. Thank you so much. Thanks so much.
Yes. So tell us, before we get to the questions, tell us a little bit about how you stumbled upon this idea, because usually the management books are pretty, they stick to the theories, and I have never come across this kind of theory.
Okay, so it all happened one day when I was in a meeting room and I had invited my team members. It was a new project that I was introducing to them. And I was expecting the team members to stretch themselves and work for a period of a few months. So, as an analogy, I asked them a question. It was a very loaded question. I asked them, if you are asked to carry a weight of 15 kilograms, how long would you be able to hold it? So some of the team members started to respond. Others, of course, they knew that this question has got some background to it. So they were saying, I'll be able to hold that weight for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. And then some guys said 10.53 minutes. So it went on like that. And then I had asked, what if that 15 kgs that I asked you to hold is your child? Then people started thinking differently. And one response, and of course, people said that some of them now extended the time and said it would be half an hour, 1 hour. So that was not within the earlier time interval that defined. Right. And one team leader said that I can hold for my lifetime. So that response, shook me up. So I decided that, why not experiment the perspective of a father into the management role? And that is how the concept of father manager was born. And I had experimented with this, practiced it, and that is how a model could be created over the last 17 years of practice.
Right. So I wanted to ask you about, I was reading the book, and in Breeze in a Teacup, you mentioned the 8 stages of being a father manager. our listeners would definitely want to know how did you, segregate these stages, and how did you think of this kind of theory?
Okay, thank you, Rohan. The eight natural stages of leadership model is a highly creative, progressive, and a simplified analogy of team engagement from a team member entering into an organization, and it continues all through the life. The distinction from other models is that the relationship with the leader is perennial. For leadership to be in charge only until a limited validity date, it's not a prepaid recharge coupon. Leadership, uh, from the perspective of the father manager, is for the lifetime. This way, this model is unique. The stages were segregated based on extrapolating an evolving relationship between a father and a child, typically. So I discovered that this turned out to be so appropriate to the leadership levels of engagement and the challenges that the leader and the team face typically in a workplace today. To just give you a brief on some of these eight stages. The first stage is the blind spot stage. So when a child is born, the child merely expects comfort. The child is not so bothered about the relationship per se. The child wants just comfort, so that the lights doesn't get switched on unnecessarily when the child wants to sleep. So that kind of a comfort. So similarly, when a new team member enters into the organization, the new team member only wants the fear and anxiety to be eliminated. The new team member is not expecting much out of the manager at the stage one, which is the blind spot stage. Right. Then comes the reciprocation stage, where the team member settles down and starts to reciprocate. The trust is not yet completely built, but starts to reciprocate with the father manager. So this again happens with the child. A lot of people would come towards the child. The child does not consider the father to be very special at that stage. So that's the reciprocation stage. Yeah. And I'm skipping the third stage. Let me come to the fourth stage, which is the entitlement stage, where like how the child determines that the father has the right to give what is good. The team member now realizes that the father manager, what is suggested by the father manager is in the best interest of the team member. Right. So like this, it moves on to the sixth stage, the differentiation stage, where during adolescence, the child compares father with others. So this is a stage where the team member typically moves on, starts working with other managers in other areas, and understands that they have been mentored differently than the rest of them. So they have an advantage. So the some kind of dilemma also kicks in during this differentiation stage. Right. And then comes the on-demand stage, where it is something like when you go to a college, you may not be interacting with your dad as frequently as you used to do before. So this is a stage where the mentoring is not required as much from the father manager to the team member, and the team member knows when to contact the father manager. And the last stage is the outgrow stage, where the father manager takes pride in seeing the team member outgrow the father manager himself. So for the book launch of Father of Your Team, one of the chief guests was my team member who had outgrown me and has become a very successful entrepreneur.
That must be so satisfying.
Yes, very much. Soul satisfying, absolutely. Yeah. So anything that's hard to remember is hard to follow. So this sequence is easy to remember and has a natural flow. So that is why it is called the 8 natural stages of leadership.
Right. A lot of in the corporate structure, of course, a lot of emphasis is given to goals and theories, right? And you have mentioned in your book that the richest reward for a leader is leaving a legacy, which is a sort of, I must say, it's really good on paper, of course, but how does it you achieve it in practical life? I mean, when you have so much of pressure while working, how does one think with that kind of vision and clarity?
Okay, since you said practical life, practically it is possible through following the 8 natural stages of leadership. Okay. And since you talked about legacy, etymologically, the word legacy is derived from the Latin word legatus, which means person delegated. Okay. A gift handed over to another or received from the predecessor. So that's what it means. So when something is to be received from someone, logically you would like to receive it from a person whom you trust. That applies even if it's a great gift. If your grandmother is to give you a small diamond ring, you'll be happy to receive it. Yeah. If a suspicious looking person in the railway station tries to pass on more diamonds to you, you will hesitate to receive it. Isn't it so?
Right, true.
So leaders who are trusted can only leave a legacy, which means someone is ready to receive it from them. Okay. So how long that legacy can remain depends on how long the leader is in the minds of the people. Yeah. You have read the kind of influence Freddie, the father manager, leaves on Arnold, Martha, and Vishy.
Yes.
A father manager connects with the team through the lifetime, hence that makes it easier to leave a legacy. I want to close it with this line. Father of your team can become an essential guide for leaders who are ready to grow beyond their position to lasting reverence and results. That's not my line, it's a testimonial from the New York Times best-selling author and the Global Gurus ranked #1 in customer service, Ron Kaufman.
Oh, great. And you have, in fact, this testimonial is mentioned on the back of your book also. So it's a big thing coming from Ron, of course. Something that interesting that I stumbled upon in the book was the part where you have mentioned a very high-flying manager with all sorts of pedigree, who is not really involved with the team on a very emotional level, and so perhaps is not that effective or is having issues because of that. So generally what we have seen in the corporate structure, it's empathy is not something which is on priority. So how the father manager concept can bring about this change, because right now and also there is stress because of all of this. Mm-hmm. How does a father manager bring about this change?
Okay, so that's a very, very good question. Thank you for that, Rogan. A leader who is not emotionally involved with the team. Before meeting Freddie, you're referring to Brandon, the project director at Transinext.
Yeah.
So I doubt if it will be perfectly right to say that corporate structures discourages emotions and empathy.
Okay.
If that is the case, motivation programs, employee satisfaction surveys, or performance counseling will not be there in any corporates. So these are emotion and empathy dependent mechanisms that exist.
Okay.
Vineet Nair, the former CEO of HCL, he continues to have a very high number of followers in HCL and many other corporates where he had never worked.
Okay.
He was the person who introduced employees first, customers second philosophy, which came into a book with the same name.
Okay.
And the other thing you may be knowing is about Anand Mahendra. Last October, he had gifted a KUV 100 car to a guy who had quit his job, took his mother 25,000 kilometers in a scooter to different temples that she wished to see.
Oh yes, that was all over Twitter. I read about that. Yeah.
Yes. So leaders who are emotional and use emotion as their strength get an iconic status.
Yeah.
The CEO of Campbell Soup Company, who had sent more than 30,000 handwritten thank you notes during his tenure, features in Father of Your Team.
Okay.
So if someone is a typical manager, even current employees will not provide employee referrals when the business grows.
Right.
When the perspective changes to a father manager, even ex-employees would refer a new business itself to the organization. So there's a quote from Robin Sharma from the book Mega Living that I would want to take to the advantage here.
Yeah.
The deeper your relationships, the more effective your leadership, because people will not follow you if they do not trust you. And before someone will lend you a hand, you must touch their hearts. Fortunately, Rogan, you don't come across many business self-help books that focus on this deep relationship and connect. So that gives a kind of a first mover advantage to Father of Your Team.
Yeah. it's a great segue into my next question, because I was about to ask you about quotes that you have mentioned at the beginning of every chapter.
Yeah.
How did you choose these quotes? Because I mean, it must be, I don't know how easy or tough it was, but what was the thought behind these quotes?
Okay, good that you noticed the speciality of those quotes and asked this question. There is a quote again. I want to use another quote here.
Yeah.
Everything is tough before it becomes easy. So
Yeah.
I inserted these quotes. I inserted these quotes at the beginning of each chapter towards the final cycle of copywriting. So which means that I had very limited time at that point to send the book to the typesetting.
Okay.
You would have recognized that each of these quotes resonate with the core theme of the chapter. For instance, in a chapter like Scales of Fairness, where Arnold is unable to come to terms on promotions that happened and how Freddie makes him realize, the chapter's opening quote is, "The greatest good you can do for one another is not to share your own riches, but to reveal to him his own."
Yeah.
So, since Father of Your Team is a book of a global dimension, there is a balance on quotes of leaders and philosophers across the world. Of course, Google was very helpful.
Right.
You may have also heard of this. A person who has one watch can tell you the time correctly. A person who has two watches is never too sure. Similarly, I was spoiled by choice with lots of quotes coming up. So I had to apply a filter and find a perfect fit so that it covers about 70% of the core message in the chapter. So more than difficult or easy, I would call that experience as enjoyable.
Yeah, great. Quoting from your book, you have mentioned managers are not expected to know answers of all the questions. And I found that quite fascinating, because at a very novice sort of level, we always look up to the manager to have, most of the questions. So how does a manager, when he is in such a soup, when he doesn't know the question, get out of this situation and still keep the team motivated?
Okay. Okay, great question. I would like to say that leaders are not expected to be like Alexa devices to give any answer. Right? It's not humanly possible to have all answers to all questions. I understand that you are referring this from a chapter that's favorite to many of the readers, that is Rough Stones and Marbles.
Yes.
To quote the context from that chapter, it's a conversation between Vishti and Freddie, where Freddie says, leaders are not those who have answers to all the questions, they are those who ask the right questions.
Yeah.
So the message from that is, if a team member asks a question that the leader finds difficult to answer, and if it is the right question, the leader should feel great about it and not embarrassed. Because the same question can come from a client or anyone else the leader is accountable to answer. So that is how a father manager sees it. So, and as you know, Rohan, today when digital transformation is coming in and there are a lot of moving parts, leadership is about delivering amidst limitations and uncertainty. So when a leader does not know, the leader has to say, I do not know. The leader's role is to enable the solutions, right? He need not be the inventor of all solutions right away.
Yeah. My next question was kind of personal also, because I have faced this perhaps in the past, and a lot of millennials are a huge part of the workforce now. I mean, we see people in that bracket in the teens.
I agree.
So
yes.
What are the new issues that are coming into, which of course the book also has perhaps addressed, or how should the manager look at millennials? Is it different, or it is kind of the same?
Okay, so being a business self-help book, let me use a Qualtrics survey and say something. Qualtrics is the world's first employee management platform powered by predictive intelligence. So 67% of the millennials said that they would be willing to take a pay cut to work at a company that offers good mentorship opportunities. You would come across Freddie, the father manager, as a mentor in many chapters like adjust your sales, feed your focus, and chapters like differentiate without distancing, to name a few.
Right.
So unlike a typical manager, Freddie doesn't mentor Martha or Henry with the intent of retaining them in his team. So again, as per Qualtrics survey, the most important qualities of a manager from a millennials perspective is number one, trustworthy, which is 81% of the guys had quoted trustworthiness as the number one characteristic that they expect from a manager. So in the blind spot stage, this is the first factor that father manager Freddie lays emphasis on, and he demonstrates a method to Brandon with the 3 environmental catalysts.
Yeah.
Right. And number 2, which is on top, is 80% of the millennials said that they would expect their managers to respect their work-life balance. So chapters like Flying High with a Fine Balance, where Freddie advises Brandon, don't just plan your team members' work, help them plan their vacations too. And there is a reference to the 10,000 hours rule and the hidden secret, which is about the number of hours of sleep the violinists who were surveyed for the 10,000 hours rule had clocked. Right. So, and the third thing, which as per the same survey, is 64% of the millennials want their managers to be available and responsive. This is a big challenge to me.
Yeah.
The chapter like Cockpit to Staying Connected is where Freddie reveals how a leader can stay connected with the team even when the leader is pressed hard on time.
Yes.
So, Father of Your Team, as many readers have indicated on Amazon and Goodreads so far, is a must-read for leaders who will require an upgrade to handle millennials, because millennials are going to be 70% of the workforce by 2025.
Right. Of course, this is the Booknerds podcast, and we love to talk about books. So I wanted to ask you about the books that you have loved over a period of time, and perhaps they must have, shaped Father of Your Team. So any mentions, any recommendations for the listeners and book lovers?
Sure. I read a good number of self-help books from authors like Hal Elrod, a Tamil author named Inchokan, Marshall Goldsmith, Robin Sharma, Ram Charan. So all these books have helped me immensely. To be frank, the concept or the content of Father of Your Team is not influenced by any of these authors' books.
Right.
I can say that the method of creatively linking the characteristics through the stages to situations in business is inspired by a fabulous financial management book, which is titled Parables of the Pipeline.
Okay.
I have never written a story from my childhood, Rohan.
Okay.
I'm a humorist and I'm an engaging public speaker. That is it.
Right.
There was an award-winning author who mentored me to write in a fashion that's so interesting. Right. And that's the Asian guru of authoring, Mr. Raja Singho. So this book would not have been even 30% of what it is today had it not been for my mentor.
Right. One final question, because you have said that you had a mentor during the entire writing process.
Yes.
How often did you have to edit or re-edit this? Because these concepts, when you look at it, it's a big responsibility also, to be honest, because you are communicating it to so many people. So how often did you edit or revisit the book during the writing process?
I would say I wrote the first draft and finished it by March. And the second version, which was fit to go for copy editing, was ready by May. So between March and May, the book went through a complete facelift. My mentor advised that earlier the style was I would talk about a concept, there would be an anecdote, and there would be a case study and a personal experience. So that's how the book was organized, chapter by chapter.
Right.
My mentor, Mr. Raja Singho, told me that it will not be very engaging if it is delivered in this patchy manner. So the whole character of Freddie and what happens in an organization over a 20 years period was done because he asked me to create a lead character and deliver all messages and situations through the character and experiences the transformation through the team. So the book went through a major transformation, and I traveled a couple of times 320 kilometers to meet my mentor, get his green signal before I moved on to the next stage.
Okay. Okay. So, thank you so much, Venkat, for talking to us. I would encourage all our listeners to go on Amazon. Of course, buy the book, read it, and leave their feedback on Amazon. And of course, Goodreads as well. And one final question, which is not at all related to the book, Venkat. What is your
Yes.
favorite karaoke song? Because you love karaoke so much.
Yeah, those are Tamil songs,
Okay.
and I'm sure
Okay.
even if I make a mistake, you would not be able to identify it.
Okay, okay, great having you, Venkat. Great having you, and looking forward to having you back again on the Booknerds podcast. Thank you for speaking with us.
It was wonderful talking to you, Rogan. Thank you so much, and thanks for the great recommendation on Father of Beauty.
Thank you so much.